There are several standard hive setups. What we have a lot of, not all, is a four-way commercial pallet. So you'll see some of these four-way pallets sitting around, and there's actually 4 colonies on each one of these pallets, and the pallet is configured as a bottom board or a floor in 4 different hives, and they do pretty well that way. That's a standard commercial configuration. And so are there any here that would like to go to commercial beekeeping someday? Anybody?
Someday.
A few. So that's the configuration if you're going to move your bees around often. So the commercial beekeepers will move them from alfalfa bloom to alfalfa bloom. So in the summer they'll move them, and then they'll move them out to California or elsewhere. And this is the standard hobbyist and sideliner configuration with a stack of hives. And Ted is going to come and build a hive for you and show you the different components of it. And this is, I think one of our sergeants was out feeding a beehive in December a few years ago, in about Christmas time. So, Ted, here I think so. We'll just take a few minutes and go through another couple of areas and then move on to eat. So, equipment. What do you need? I carry a box with me usually. This one was made up for me. The first one of these toolboxes was designed by a sergeant first class in our program, and I usually carry that one. This is the original one that he built. So I carry this one filled up. And it's just handy to have everything by your side out there. And eat the smoker. Your smoker will fit in the end like so. That's hot, but this is designed so that the heat won't burn anything. And the hive, all the tools fit neatly in this thing. So it's just neat to have a box like this of some sort. You don't have to have it. There's a few tools that you must have. So a hive tool or two. So this is a hive tool, and this is another fashion. This is called the J-hook. It's called a standard hive tool, and there are other configurations also. You can get them in hardware stores, but all bee stores sell them. This one I don't think you can get. There's always a sharp edge on one end, and a curve like this is neat to have. When you are working with a hive, everything is going to be stuck together in time, as Ted said. So just to get one box freed up from another, like so, you can go to a corner along an edge, push this in, and pop it up. And sometimes it takes quite a bit of pressure, and you may have to pop up a couple of corners loose before you can get it up, because it's stuck tight. It's a good glue. And then inside, when you lift these frames out, these will all be glued together. So if you can simply put a tool in like so, and pry them loose, pop them loose, then you can take it out to examine it. What Ted didn't mention too, I may as well, this is another aside, how you handle the frames when you're taking them out to look at bees is important. Everything calmly, softly, and no jerks. If you pull this out too fast, the bees on the front can roll, and that will kill some bees. So you should just gently take it loose and gently pull it out like so, and then you can examine it. And just hold it like this, and most of the bees will stay on, some will fly. Most of the bees will stay on, the nurse bees, the house bees won't fly usually. And you can examine the frame, and then you can simply turn it over and examine the other side. If you're just trying to verify that the hive is strong, you can tell by the amount of bees, and then if you want to make sure you have a robust queen in there, you simply make sure that there are eggs and larvae. And if you see a lot of eggs and larvae through a couple of frames, you can feel pretty confident that you've got a strong frame, a strong hive, and you really don't need to go much further. You don't have to find the queen. It'd be kind of neat for those that are just starting, to try to find the queen initially, so that you can see what she looks like and come to appreciate all that. But it's not important that you find her if there are a lot of eggs and you have a good brood pattern, and the frames are filling up right. Try to keep it closed try to keep it open as little as possible. I don't ever like to keep the hive open more than a few minutes if possible, because you're disrupting the hive, especially during nectar flow when the nectar's coming in. So soft, gentle, careful is probably the best way to put it, to manage the frames. I think did Ted talk about foundations in the frame?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Okay, yeah. So those snap in and snap out. Yeah. You can put those foundations. You can put the frames in without a foundation, and the bees will still make wax. And you can cut that wax out then to make cut comb honey. They don't always make it perfectly, so you won't get 100% cut comb. You can also make Ross rounds, and then there are some squares. I forgot what the squares are called now. You insert into the frames, and the bees will fill them up, and you simply pop the honey out, and you can put them in a container and sell them as comb honey. The advantage with plastic is that when you extract the honey in a centrifuge, with the plastic frames, the wax doesn't blow apart, and it's easier to extract. So if you do have these open framed honey, you really have to cut that by hand. If you put it in an extractor, the wax will blow out, and it's not useful that way. Okay, so so the hive tool or two, the sharp edges, often bees will make extra wax atop the frames in places where you don't want it. This can simply scrape it off, or if you've got a lot of propolis, you might find huge amounts of, some hives will make more propolis than others. It's a sticky brown, greenish brown residue. You can scrape that off also to make things seal up better. Hive tools are important. If you look at my box, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hive tools. I usually know where one is. Now, that's an exaggeration, but I always have 2 or 3 at least, because I will always misplace one. At some point I'll forget where I put it and it's in the weeds and I can't see it, so I always have a spare. So to have at least one extra is a good idea. Bee brush. So a little brush like this, just a soft brush. There are times when you need to brush bees off of the frames. And so when you have just a hive or two, one way to get the bees off of the honey when it's time to process the honey is simply to brush them off and set them in a box. And we can talk about a little more about that later. Set these in a box so that no bees are back on them for your processing. So you just simply brush your bees. The book will tell you should brush them up, because you won't tend to roll them as much. They'll fly a little over the edge. If you brush them down, you may roll them more. As long as you're very gentle, you won't lose many bees in this. This will become saturated with honey after a while, so you should wash them. I try to wash them every day, because once they're stiff with honey, they're not as soft and they're harder on the bees. Also when you're, I don't think we've talked about it, but if you have 2 hives and one is very strong and one is very weak, often the strong hive will rob, and I'll talk about robbing later, rob the weak hive. So the best thing to do is to try to balance the hives. It's easier to do on the 4 ways because you've got them all right there. So you can take a frame of brood in this hive, and this is brood, cap brood on there, and brush the bees off of this and put this in the weaker hive. And those bees that are larvae, eggs, or larvae or pupa aren't attached to any queen yet. So if you put it in the weaker hive, you're going to strengthen that hive. So that's one way to strengthen a weaker hive. They don't have to be right close together. If you've got them 2 miles apart, you can take brood out of one hive and put it 1 miles away. But you have to replace that frame you take out, of course. But you can use that to brush the bees off when you move them. So that's important to have one of those with you along, just in case you might need it. So our boxes are all built to hold these things. A smoker, and this is an old one I've been using for a long time, but they just simply open up, cork in the end to keep it safe, but you open it up, fill it with fuel, and you can use fuel like this This is a residue of the cotton industry, and it makes a fairly cool smoke. You don't want to use wood chips or anything wood because it creates sparks, and you're blowing those sparks in there, and that will kill bees. And wax also, it's not likely that you'll start a fire, but you could, because wax has a fairly low burn point, and you can burn it. So this you can buy in bags like so. There are these little ones that have been on the market now for a while that come from China. They work pretty good, so I sometimes use a combination of these and this, and it lasts longer. And so you can also use burlap. Make sure it's untreated, and you can stuff this in the smoker chamber. This one still has some residue fuel in it, and then I use as a lighter one of these. So it's just quick. You can open it up, start that, and a few draws over the top, and it's started. You can also use a piece of paper down in there and start it with matches. And just in case this runs out, although I usually have spare fuel, I carry matches with me and some little pieces of paper also just as backup. But this is quick and fast, and you have your smoker lit and filled properly. It'll last probably for 45 minutes or so. Sometimes you have to relight it, it'll go out. When I go between, it gets hot, so you have to be very careful not to get your fingers. That's the reason for the guard here. This is simply to help it not burn so fast between jobs. So if you're going from hive to hive and you've got some distance to go, or if you're going to put it in a car or in a truck, back of a truck, you want to cork it up, and that will eventually put the fire out because it can't breathe as well. So there are different types of smokers, some with guards, some without, large ones, small ones, and so whatever you think is appropriate for your situation. Bigger ones, normally if you're going to go through a lot of hives, you don't need to have a very big smoker to take care of one or two, for sure. So gloves. I don't know if there's any gloves here, but no, I don't see any, but we have them. Got a set? Gloves have several purposes, and of course to keep from being stung is one of them. But I think you're going to find in a short period of time, once you get confident, you really don't need to wear gloves often. If you're working smoothly and you smoke them properly, by the way, which is just a few puffs in the top. So normally when I'm working with them, taking a step back here, you just slowly walk up to the hive, a few puffs in the front entrance, you take the cover off, you can see the bees looking up at you, smoke a few puffs of smoke and you'll see them go down, and then you're okay. That just neutralizes the alarm pheromone and makes them less feisty, usually. We got one hive that was Africanized from Texas, and we kept it up on a tree farm here for a while, so I could teach the students how to deal with Africanized bees. No amount of smoke. If you smoke them, all it does is tell them, every one of you get out there and sting whoever that is out there. So it was just terrible. So it worked fine. I mean, as you're covered up, you can work with Africanized bees, and they do a fair job at making honey. They're very resistant. But the farmer said, I can't even get within 50 yards of my alfalfa field, and I'm attacked. So we finally had to get rid of Bill Kennedy owned the land. He couldn't get on his tree farm either, so we had to get rid of him. So, but usually you can work without gloves. You'll find that over time. But I would recommend initially, until you're confident, if you're just starting, wear gloves. There's a gauntlet that fits up over the sleeves of your suit. The other reason I sometimes wear them is that when my steering wheel started turning green, because I was getting that propolis on my fingers, I sometimes wear them just to keep my hands cleaner and things cleaner, because it gets on there. And these aren't bad at all. These haven't been used much, but they'll get stiff and black from propolis after a while. You can wash them. Don't wash them in a ceramic sink. And hand wash them. Don't put them in your washer either. You can, but you risk getting spots on some white clothes or otherwise. So my wife, at least, will not allow me to wash these in our washer. You can wash them and dry them, and I would just recommend you wear them to begin with. A suit. Suits come in different forms. This is a ventilated suit. Obviously, it's been used. You can see this is propylene. It's probably been recently washed. It just won't wash out. This has a full surround veil that has 360-degree air movement, and I like to use them for that reason. There's also a folding veil that's easier to use when you sit in the car because it folds up behind you. It's a shroud with just the ventilation in the front. They work just fine. But the air doesn't go through them on a real hot day. So if you're out collecting honey on a 102-day day in July, this kind of round veil is a little cooler, I've found. But others like the fold-up veil. There's some hanging over there, and we have some out there also. You'll see them. They just flatten out. It's cotton all the way around except for the front. So this is a full suit, and you really don't need to have a full suit if you wear clothing that's bulky below. You don't. Again, you can designate some clothes as your bee clothes because you're going to get propolis and on your trousers also. So if you wish to keep yourself cleaner, a full suit. And maybe initially that you'd prefer that just to gain confidence in taking care of your bees. I'll zip up, and inevitably I'll find myself out there working with bees and realize that I forgot to zip my veil all the way closed. So you walk away, and if you do get a bee in your veil, what I found is that you should look at the sun, get away from the bees that are flying in there, and the bee will usually go toward the sun in the front of your veil. And just walk away so there aren't other bees there, and gently unzip your veil, take it back, let the bee fly out. And then find out where the bee got in and seal it up. Yeah, so the other sort of jacket is an inspection jacket, what I usually wear. And it's simply a top that zips up without the bottom, just like the other. This is not ventilated. This is just plain cloth. This also has the round veil that is a little more friendly in the summertime for you. A little less expensive, of course, but then you don't have the extra clothing over the bottom on a hot day, so it's a little cooler for you, even though this one isn't ventilated. You can get ventilated ones of this type also. So that's generally the type of suit. You can also buy just a veil. So sometimes if it's a quick job and I have relatively loose clothing on, this would work. I just put a veil on, tighten it around my neck, because bees are sort of programmed to go for your face and neck. That's where they'll go first. And to have a few flying around is not bad, but if they're bouncing off of you, then they're trying to get to you to sting you. So I would say always at least a veil. After a while, if you get stung enough, you won't feel it so much. But if you get stung someplace where there's a lot of nerves, end of your fingers, nose, lip, and the danger is an eye. If you get stung in an eye, you're in trouble. So you need to immediately get to a doctor. Just wear. You'll see a lot of folks not wearing anything. So be it. But I'm not willing to risk an eye, even if I am in the golden years of my life.